Welcome to training webinar 3 in our series for the Mentoring Underrepresented Faculty for Academic Excellence project, or MUFA. I'm Kathryn Fraser, licensed psychologist and behavioral medicine coordinator for the Halifax Health Family Medicine Residency Program in Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm the leader of the mentorship work group of the Underrepresented in Medicine project through the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine. This webinar will address how to help mentees build professional skills and connections. Thus far, we have talked about some of the unique challenges URM early career faculty face. We want to offer some advice on how to help them with the everyday tasks that will help them succeed in academic medicine. URM faculty are often disadvantaged in that they face bias, microaggressions, and an unlevel playing field due to not having certain privileges on their side. Mentorship should be geared toward helping them succeed, thrive, and find as much career satisfaction as they can while dealing with oppression and systemic racism, which they may encounter in academic medicine settings.
My name is Emily Walters, and I'm one of the staff members on STFM who has been helping out with this STFM-URM mentorship work group. Today, our objectives for this session and this webinar are to identify ways that we can develop an authentic rapport with mentees. We will also cover how you can develop a list of everyday tactics and skills that are useful to early career faculty, as well as provide mentees with tips for self-care and give advice on completing a mentee action plan or map.
I'm Cynthia Kim. I'm an associate program director at the Mid-Hudson Family Medicine Residency Program in Kingston, New York. And I'm going to talk a little bit about building bidirectional rapport. This is a two-way street. Really, the basis of your mentor-mentee relationship is going to be through connection, through agreeing on certain mutual expectations, your mutual sense of investment in the program. And that involves establishing those expectations for one another. I think it's really important to keep an air of transparency and being willing to acknowledge some of the potential challenges that we'll get into a little bit later, given the subject matter. Modeling a willingness to explore your own growth edges and leaning into your own discomfort as it will naturally come up in the process of mentorship is very much a part of being a mentor. And again, discussing that in a very transparent way with your mentee. Reflective listening, which we'll talk about in more depth in just a minute, to build that authentic connection with your mentee and really figure out how to match your style of mentorship with their individual needs as a mentee. So we talk a lot about ORs in motivational interviewing, which is a very popular concept in terms of counseling individuals around changes that need to be made, but it's incredibly powerful but simple stuff to also build this idea of reflective listening and building authentic rapport with your mentee. And really simple but straightforward stuff, open-ended questions, really being exploratory, allowing your mentee to elaborate and explore what's on their mind through Socratic questioning at times. Affirming statements. You have an individual you'll be working with who has a bevy of experience already, has many, many strengths, but has also likely had some really challenging experiences in their career to date. And so being very validating, affirming when you're listening can be very helpful and very powerful. Reflection. You don't have to interpret. You don't have to fix things. You don't have to be directive in your approach. Often it's very, very effective to just be reflective, to summarize what you've heard, be a mirror, reflect it back to them, ask some more probing questions, and allow them to engage in a more evocative process. So keeping with that theme of using the ORs, open-ended questions. Something as simple as, tell me more about what drew you to this program. What about this program really spoke to you or sang to you and encouraged you to apply? Help me better understand your goals for growth within your program. Again, it can be tempting when we think of ourselves as mentors to become directive in our approach. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to do. But it's much more effective if we can elicit those goals from the mentee themselves. Affirming statements can very much be reflective of their strengths, as we noticed before, and what they've accomplished already, and helping them figure out how to use those strengths and leverage those strengths to address areas or gaps where they feel that things are more of a struggle or more of a challenge for them. And always lots of validation, validating their effort, validating the efficacy of what they're already doing and what they're trying to do. Reflection can start at a very surface level and just be simply repeating what you've heard back. This will really allow your mentee to hear that you're listening, that you've connected with what they're saying, and that you can repeat that back to them. You're paying attention, you're tuned in. Rephrasing, paraphrasing. This is what I think that you're saying. Am I getting this right? Amplifying. A lot of times our mentees will have a tendency to minimize or invalidate their own feelings about things. And so not being afraid to amplify when we need to address that, when we need to reflect that minimization back to them and help them, really kind of own what it is that they're thinking and feeling or what they're trying to do. Interpretation, with or without emotions. Sometimes it's appropriate to share a little bit of our fiery anger or self-righteous indignation to help motivate our mentees to say, yeah, that really didn't sit well with me either. I want to do something about that. And at times reframing, if there's stuff going on, interpretations that aren't helpful, reflection with a little bit of a reframe can help someone go from feeling powerless to empowered to make a positive change or address something that's challenging. And summarizing, always stopping along the way and kind of saying, let me see if I got this right. Let me see if we're on the same page about this. And then helping them identify next steps, again, without being overly directive.
One of the things that we found very effective in developing our training program with mentors is to ask them to consider some questions before we started the training. And then we look at the responses and see how can this be helpful in mentoring and working with your mentee who will experience similar things to you and be able to benefit from any tips and things that you picked up along the way. So one of the questions that we asked the mentors to consider was, what was one thing you wish you had done or known about earlier in your career that helped you to achieve success? So by reviewing their own path to success and lessons that they learned along the way, they can pass on this wisdom to their mentees and hopefully empower them to do these things sooner rather than later in their career. As previously stated in another webinar, some of our white mentors stated that they were aware that it was easier for them to speak up in groups and to ask forcefully for what they wanted without being silenced or tone policed. We acknowledge that faculty who are underrepresented may not receive those same privileges. We encourage them to speak out for what they want, and I encourage all of us to take on the task of calling out racism and bias and really addressing those systemic types of policies that continue to keep this in place, where only certain individuals should feel privileged to be able to speak out without fear of being censored, and others feel they have to be more quiet. So generally in response to this question was a theme of being proactive and really trying to take things in their own hands to develop their career. So some of the mentors said that it was important for them to learn early on to negotiate how much they would take on. And that's a very common theme in this mentorship program. And we find that our URM mentees are really asked to take on a lot and feel a lot of pressure to do things perfectly and to say yes to everything. So that's a very important skill the mentors wanted us to know that they wish that they had learned earlier on. Be able to talk to others about the areas that you want to grow in. Be proactive, find the people that you need to speak to. Find mentors, and there are mentors within your institution, hopefully, and also outside of your institution. And by getting involved in various national organizations, such as the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine, you can get involved in interest groups and network and find other people who can become mentors to you. Some of the mentors mentioned that they wish that they had known more about how to develop research projects and also to be able to build in time for scholarship in their work week, and that we're often expected to do scholarship over and above everything else. And if they had found out a way to be able to build in time for research and writing and so on, that they would really have appreciated that. Some of them really encouraged the mentees, to follow their vision, build their own unique career path. We know that our URM mentees have interests that are sometimes different from the mainstream, perhaps more community oriented, perhaps oriented to specific cultural ethnic groups. And it can be difficult to find people to partner with you in those endeavors, but we really encourage them to try to do that and to be proactive with finding out from others what to do, who wants to collaborate, and also collecting ideas from what others are already doing. Here are some of the aspects of early career building that we suggest that mentors focus on. As a work group, we got together and brainstormed and thought about what are some of the specific tasks that mentees might need some assistance in. Getting organized, creating goals for yourself, and developing a plan to achieve them, we think is going to be very important. And to be able to have a strategy on how to develop this can be very beneficial. In the MUFA project, we created a tool called the Mentee Action Plan, or MAP, to offer guidance in this process. It is designed to help mentees think about what they want to accomplish in the short term and the longer term, and to proactively design the steps to get there. I will be describing more details of the MAP shortly, and we just encourage anyone who's doing mentorship projects like this to be able to have some kind of structure in place to help your mentees develop their plan of action. Encourage mentees to get to know the people in their organization who can answer their questions, and point them out to the people who can answer the questions that those people can't answer. Most of us can access an organizational chart. We also want our mentees to think about what we term the relational map. And that means, who are the informal network of people to help them get things done? People may have a certain title or a certain place that they hold in the organization, but who are the people who are really the movers and shakers and can help them to get from point A to point B? So is there someone in the organization who's particularly strong in research? And would you be able to approach them? Are there staff members who interact regularly with students and residents and can give you inside tips as an educator? So those are some of the things you can do as a mentor, is help them, show them the ropes, and help them to find people in their organization who can help them to do that. Early career faculty can also really benefit from getting support when they feel like they are encountering roadblocks. They might need some extra support from you. There might be people in their own organization who can help them get around their roadblocks. You can really be helpful to them as mentors in helping them find those ways to make it around the roadblocks. Be prepared to help your mentees with specific guidance on the various aspects of teaching and doing their job. Be willing to share and even partner with them to develop talks and projects if possible. If you come across particularly useful resources, be willing to share them, and also be available to give feedback on ongoing projects. It's important to reflect on your challenges when you were early in your career and think of what your most useful mentors and fellow faculty did to help you develop those basic skills. You have to meet the mentors where they are in their career and be able to help them with those extra steps and building blocks. So another excellent suggestion would be faculty development groups, faculty development interest groups, or faculty development training and organizations. Those are great resources, and your mentor might not be aware of what is out there. It's also important to provide tips for professionalism that you have picked up along the way. Always encourage your mentee to strive for the highest ethical standards and to be available when you can to help them if they have difficult conversations that they want to tackle. It's a good thing to reflect on the people with whom you've worked, who you have enjoyed working the most, found the most professional and the most helpful, and to be able to encourage them to develop those kinds of skills. And those are skills of timeliness and organization, and really building themselves to be the best professionals that they can be. And again, we recognize that URM faculty don't always feel empowered to seek out certain people to be able to help them and be able to talk to them and so on. And we want to empower them and encourage them to do that and to be around the people whom they consider to be really good role models also. So as I mentioned, I will elaborate a little bit more on the Mentee Action Plan and how this can be useful for you and your mentee to work together. And we encourage the mentee to look over it first and complete it, and then have a meeting with you and figure out how they can brush it up and how you can help them fill in some of the gaps and so on. So we start out the form by asking them to list out what parts of their career feel like a calling to them. So it's natural, it's what they really wanted to do, it's what they always wanted to do. And then what parts of their career feel more like an assigned task or something that's harder to achieve. And this helps them to focus on the things that they really enjoy and really want to dive into and spend a lot of time on. And then perhaps those things are going to be a bit more of a challenge for them. And then that way they can be working on both of those and feel encouraged by the things that they're very passionate about, and then hopefully get support from you with the things that are somewhat more difficult to them. We also ask them to look at short-term goals and long-term goals. And it's sometimes hard for early career folks to think about their long-term goals. And so as a mentor, you can really help them and be beneficial to them in those conversations. And it might be easier for them to think about the short-term goals as they have stepped into their position and found out what is being asked of them. And then the long-term goals can be more what their career aspirations and desires are for. And they do need to know that those are important for them to focus on also. Then we encourage them to develop some goals and objectives, and we like to use the acronym talking about SMART goals. So we want the goals to be specific, measurable, accessible or achievable, realistic, and timely. And so any projects that they're working on, they have to be able to think about how long it's going to take and make sure they're not taking on too much. So for our project, we ask them to elaborate on one of their short-term goals, and that means fleshing out some objectives, thinking through what do I need to achieve this, and then what are my action steps. And these are things you can be very beneficial to them as a mentor, helping them go through this project. We also encourage you to work with them on an academic project, and this can be an excellent tool to build a mentor-mentee relationship around. And it can be something specific, such as a research project or a presentation, or it can be a curriculum that they're developing. So as best you can, be able to help them figure out something that is achievable and realistic in the time frame. And it can be something that they might start and continue after the end of your formal mentorship period. Then we also find it's very important to talk about wellness. And one way to try and ensure that that happens is to actually make it a specific goal and address it in the same way, talking about objectives, what do you need to achieve those objectives, and also what the action steps are going to be.
Hi, my name is Syeachia Dennis, and I am an associate professor at the University of Oklahoma School of Community Medicine in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about kind of that wellness, self-care aspect, the unique challenges that URM faculty will face in academic medicine. And, you know, a few of those pieces may be finding out who can you learn from within your department, who are your allies, who are going to be a part of your support system within academic medicine. Obviously, those are going to be necessary people and resources to have within your department and within your school. And so sometimes you will find those allies within your department, but oftentimes many of our mentees were coming from smaller schools. And so oftentimes they had to look outside of their department, maybe finding allies who had similar interests, similar passions, that could be their support system, help them guide and navigate academic medicine. Obviously, we want them to practice being honest, respectful, direct, and collaborative in their professional behavior. Obviously, that's going to be key to promoting their academic success. And, as the mentees encounter episodes or occurrences of discrimination, whether that be overt or microaggressions, macroaggressions within their workplace, they need to find ways to address it. Oftentimes we see that URM faculty will face these incidents and just kind of take it in, and that becomes wearing on them over time. It increases their likelihood of leaving academic medicine. Obviously, that is not the goal. We want these faculty to stay in academic medicine to thrive, and so you need to help them learn to navigate these incidents, find ways that they can call out incidents of shaming, bullying, marginalizing behavior within their department, within their school, in ways that they find in ways that are effective, in ways that help to bring about change, but also in ways that help keep them on a progressive career path. There's a lot of discussion around the minority tax, being the tax that a lot of faculty from marginalized backgrounds bear to educate, to take on tasks that are outside the traditional task and tasks that really lead to promotion or that are valued within academic medicine. So some of these outside tasks may be a part of the faculty's passion. They may be really passionate about DE&I work or passionate about in community engagement, but they need to find a balance, right? Because once you begin saying so many yeses, you build up this portfolio of things that you're doing that are not necessarily the keys to academic promotion, to academic success. And then over time, that faculty may feel like they've been burdened with things that may not necessarily help them to be successful. So learning to balancing those yeses with the nos, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Really understanding imposter syndrome. There's, again, a lot of discussion about imposter syndrome, what it means. A lot of times imposter syndrome is just the burden, those feelings that come up when you're dealing with systemic oppression, systemic marginalization within your workplace. But you do want to encourage your mentee to understand what that feels like, to own it when it's present, to talk about it with their allies, with you, with their other people who support them, so they can begin to value their presence, value their contributions, value what they're bringing to the table, even if it's not valued by the system itself. And begin to engage in individual and community activities that nurture their spirit, nurture their sense of belonging, their sense of a sense of place. And so a lot, again, that also comes back to balancing those yeses and nos, because a lot of times, people will come in and have that sense of passion about community, but you want to help them sort of navigate balancing those activities that will bring them hope and nurture their spirit, but also not become too burdensome for them. So it's important to really recognize those systemic factors that are going to impede the wellness of of your mentee, and that they need to learn to have compassion for themselves, for what they're experiencing, and really learn to place a value on who they are and what they're bringing to the table, even if that value, that recognition is not coming from the system itself. So it's important, again, to set those goals, those reflective moments for the mentee, so they can build that resilience into their action plan. We do need to acknowledge that self-care is not a value of dominant culture, of white supremacist culture. And so oftentimes when people are placing value on their own wellness, on self-care, that they can be marginalized for that. And it may seem that they're not being a team player, or doing the things necessary to succeed in academic medicine. So, again, we have to understand that some of these things are not necessarily just about the individual, but also the culture that we find ourselves in academic medicine. And so oftentimes there'll just be little value of care around others. Individual achievement will be more valued than collaborative actions, collectivist actions and approaches. So we just want to make sure that we're helping our mentees to be aware of those systemic forces that are going to counteract their attempts, their ability to seek self-care, to place value on the care of self and the care of their families and communities, so that we're not, again, always blaming the individual, but recognizing that there are cultural factors within our workplace, within our society, that are working against the wholeness and wellness of underrepresented minorities in academic medicine. So we found this infographic we thought really kind of brought home the message of some messages that will help the mentees develop some verbiage, some ways to say no. And I admit that I'm working on this myself. I find myself, instead of saying no directly, I'll find ways to get around it or say, okay, maybe later. And it all ends up piling up at the end of the day. So some of these infographics can be helpful in just helping your mentees develop the lingo, develop the ways that they can say no, and manage that wellness, that self-care component. So avoid saying yes on the spot. So before saying yes, really take that time to make sure you have the time to commit. Consult your calendars, make sure you're available. Make sure that they're estimating or thinking about how long will these actions, this task take to actually to do. So they make sure that they're thinking about how many hours they will need to dedicate to this request before they commit to it. Again, consulting the calendar, making sure that they're lining everything up with their other commitments, including those commitments that are going to be a part of a successful academic medicine portfolio. They have to remember that they can't neglect that piece. Asking themselves, why would you say yes? So why did you say yes before to other things that you thought later that maybe I should have said no to? And making sure that they're reflecting on becoming aware of those thought patterns so that when that next ask comes, that next request comes from someone else, they can really start to understand what patterns are developing and learn to start to think about ways to navigate that, whether that's let me think about it or just really that is an activity that I don't need to get involved with right now. Figure out how to say no and actually commit to that no. Again, that's easier said than done, especially when you have mentees who are particularly passionate about certain aspects, especially those who work in DE&I. So it's something that you may have to continually go back to the well, ask them how are they working on that no answer, and making sure that they're serving strategically to make sure, again, they're thinking about what percentages of their work and promotion is being factored into when they are doing certain actions. I think when I was going up for promotion, I was really surprised at how much community service was a part of my record, and then how little was put into that research, that scholarly activities that's also necessary, which is an equal part of a successful portfolio for academic promotion. So making sure they're thinking about the percentages, the time commitments that will help them to get promoted and be successful in academic medicine.
So we find that these conversations about saying no and not taking on too much are extremely important in the early parts of their career. And we want to balance that with their need for promotion and advancement. And so our second question for this webinar was, how did the mentors figure out what they needed to do for advancement, promotion, and sponsorship? So here you are later on in your career, achieving some modicum of success. What are some of the things that you learned along the way? And now while you're making a focused attempt to help your early career colleagues move along and become successful, what were some of the things that you ended up doing? And I would say that, again, we see a theme of being proactive and seeking out help, seeking out role models, seeking out the people who you want to be able to pattern your career after, looking at figuring out who are the people around you who seem to be successful, enjoying what they want to do, maybe doing some of the things that you want to do. Look at other people's CVs and see what are the things that they've been working on and what are the things that they've been using to build their career, and what can you pull from that. Our national organizations are excellent resources to find people to collaborate with and resources. STFM has a wealth of resources, not only on their website, but also in terms of the people who run the organization and the people who join the organization. So many people talked about how STFM was a great resource for them to find like-minded colleagues and to be able to network and to join in with the collaboratives and the different opportunities that many leadership opportunities, leadership training, fellowship training, emerging leaders is one of the examples of that. If you're interested in leadership, is there a program that you can join to get some training in that? Many of our mentors were proactive in seeking out sessions that described what to do in order to go up for promotion. And many found sponsorship and mentorship through STFM. And I do want to make the point of the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So mentorship is someone who's working along with you, supporting you, advising you, and so on. And sponsorship is when you're able to find someone who can help open some doors for you and help you get to that next step. And certainly our mentors thought that both of those were important. Being able to go to your superiors, your department chair, your program director, let them know what you're interested and how you would like to advance and be promoted and get to higher places in your career. And then, it really helps to develop a plan that is achievable and organized. And some people learned about promotion the hard way by trying and failing and then trying again. And I think that's an extremely important lesson for you as mentors and folks later on in your career to be able to share with your early career colleagues.
So this slide covers some of the other topics to foster success that came up as themes that we both suggested to mentors and that mentors suggested to us. That these are definitely topics that mentees were interested in discussing, and these would be topics that you could cover in a session with your mentee, such as even just going over the resources on the STFM website. I realize I'm speaking currently as an STFM staff member, but there's often things like this that might be part of, you could almost say like a hidden curriculum of that there are great resources that are out there that it's really important to take a little bit of time and highlight how to find what's available, whether it's easy free curricula that's available, how to find things on like a resource library, or where to find accreditation tools and things like that. So it could be very worthwhile to work with your mentee and go over things like how to find journal resources, conference resources, faculty development, and so on, or how to find awards that you might be able to self-nominate yourself for, or scholarships and that kind of thing. So just spending some time going over that could be a really meaningful opportunity to kick off some conversation with a mentee. Similarly, tips for seeking advancement and promotion could be a very valuable topic as you just open that up with your mentee and talk about what that looks like, what are logical next steps for their career. They might not know. You could really open that up with your mentee and see, do they have an idea of where they'd like to go next, or are they really searching for what options of career paths might be? And even if you don't think of yourself as that senior in your career, you might be surprised what you know as far as options are of possible paths that you could just point out to them or lay out for them as a series of options of ways they could go. You could also talk with your mentee about ways to develop professional networks. And this goes back to what Kathryn was just discussing. There are so many different ways to do this, and this can be through professional associations networks like the AAFP, STFM, NAPCRAG, all that kind of alphabet soup of associations are all really valuable places to come up with a professional network that really speaks to your passions, and can be wonderful places to find other collaborators and other institutions to do research, to develop curriculum, to get ideas. And this professional network outside of your institution and within is really invaluable. And then again, how to find sponsorship. I think that's been a theme throughout this presentation. But the topic of sponsorship is so important, and so important to be kind of brought out into the open about what are ways to seek out and find both mentors, but also people who can sponsor you, who can also actually speak up for you, advocate for you, and bring their significant power and career resources to bear, and be that voice for you when you're not in the room, and say, you know, so-and-so would be wonderful in this position. And so how do you connect with people like that? Well, to be honest, it's through developing a professional network is a great start for that. So have those conversations together and get into the nuts and bolts. And then leadership skill development. Once again, you might find that you can talk to your mentee about, is that something that their institution is going to provide for them, like kind of automatically just take advantage of the resources that are there? Or is this something that they'll need to be very proactive about and go out and kind of go looking for it and look on different like professional association websites? For instance, STFM has a compendium of leadership fellowships and programs that are available from all different family medicine associations. So you can look at that on our website if you're interested in finding more leadership skills development programs and opportunities. And so you could talk about that with your mentee as well. So just lots of opportunities. These might give you some ideas of ways that you could foster success.
I really liked this saying when I found it. It says, the road to success is always under construction. And to me, this is so encouraging, because we all have days where we're grappling along and feeling, am I really getting where I need to go? And that will be a question that you will help your mentees to be able to answer. So just to summarize the theme of many of the aspects of this presentation, you know, certainly reflect on your own experience as a person in academic medicine and how you got where you are. We all had to start somewhere, and you could very well be surprised how much you know and how rich your experiences are and how much you have to share with your mentees. So that is our presentation, and we encourage you to reach out to any of us if you have any additional questions. And the next slide shows you our references. First of all, my information there if you want to contact me. And the final slide shows you our references where you can go for more information. So thank you for your attention, and do not hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have any questions.